I don't know why her voice stuck with me the way it did. Maybe it was the softness in it. Maybe it was the way she said the words like she was noticing something she shouldn't. But the moment she looked at me and said, "You've grown up fast," I swear the whole shop went still, like even the machines were waiting to hear what came next. It was late afternoon in the repair shop, the kind of day where dust hangs in the air like it's too tired to fall. The old ceiling fan clicked in this slow, uneven rhythm, and my shirt was sticking to my back because someone had forgotten to fix the AC again. I was replacing the chain on a customer's bike when I felt her before I actually saw her, like a shift in the room's temperature. She always walked in quietly, but not shyly. More like she didn't need to announce herself. The world adjusted around her. "Is anyone free to take a look at my car?" she asked, leaning slightly against the counter. Her voice, warm, controlled, unmistakably self-assured, cut through the shop's stale air. I wiped my hands on a towel before turning around. "Yeah, I can check it," I said, a little too quickly. She smiled. Not a big one, just enough to say she noticed the rush in my tone. She had this way of looking at people that made them aware of everything they were doing. Posture, breath, even where their eyes landed. A kind of quiet knowing. Her hair was tied loosely today, a few strands falling forward like they had their own opinions. She tucked one behind her ear as she followed me toward the garage bay, heels clicking softly against the concrete. She wasn't dressed fancy, dark jeans, white blouse, but somehow she always looked like she'd stepped out of a world that moved slower, more intentionally. "What's wrong with it?" I asked. "It makes a sound," she said, pausing for a moment like she was choosing her words. "A stubborn one." I waited, but she didn't clarify. She just watched me bend down to check her front tire, her gaze steady. I pretended not to notice, though I felt the back of my neck warm. When I glanced up, she quickly shifted her eyes to the shelves of motor oil, as if she hadn't been studying me. Subtle things, barely noticeable, but they landed harder than they should. I asked her to turn the engine on. She did, sliding into the driver's seat with a smoothness that made the car feel suddenly smaller around her. The low rumble of the engine filled the space between us, but beneath it there was something else, an odd quiet, a kind of waiting. She leaned out the open window. "Is it bad?" she asked. "No," I said, squinting at the engine. "Just a belt. Loose." She exhaled like she'd been holding the breath longer than the situation required. "Thank you. I hate feeling stuck." I nodded, not sure what to say. Her words didn't match the car problem. They didn't match the setting. They didn't match the polite smile she tried to cover them with. And for a moment, she looked, almost, unsteady. Just enough for me to catch it. As I tightened the belt, she stepped beside me, closer than before. Close enough that I caught the scent of her perfume. Something light, something warm, something not meant for anyone my age to notice the way I did. "You've grown up fast," she said softly. I froze. Her voice was low, almost thoughtful, like she hadn't planned to say it out loud. She blinked, as if realizing too late that the words had slipped. And then the moment passed. She stepped back. I kept working. Neither of us said anything. But the echo of that sentence, it stuck to me the whole evening, long after she'd driven away. Because she didn't say it like a compliment. She said it like a change she hadn't been prepared for. She came back 2 days later. Not for the car. Not really. She said she wanted to make sure the belt wasn't slipping again, but the way she held the keys, loosely, dangling from 2 fingers like she wasn't fully committed to the excuse, told me she already knew the car was fine. The shop was quieter that morning. Rain tapped lightly on the metal roof, making everything feel closer, softer. I was organizing the tool drawer when I heard her footsteps, slow, measured, almost reluctant. She hovered near the entrance for a moment, like she wasn't sure she should come all the way in. "You're early today?" I said. She gave a small, uneven smile. "Couldn't sleep." Something about the way she said it, too casually, like it was supposed to be a joke, made me look at her longer than I should have. Her hair was still damp from the rain, falling in gentle waves. Her coat wasn't buttoned all the way, and she kept adjusting the collar as if she needed something to do with her hands. "Want me to check the car again?" I asked. "If you don't mind." She hesitated, then added quietly, "I don't want to be a bother." A strange thing for someone like her to say. She wasn't the type who should ever worry about taking up space. I walked with her to the garage bay. She followed slowly, her heels softer today, her movements smaller. Not the confident woman from 2 days ago. This version of her felt dimmed. Not broken, just tired in a way she didn't want anyone to see. When I opened the hood, she stood beside me, arms crossed. Not defensively, but almost like she was holding herself together. Her eyes kept drifting to the rain outside instead of the car. Long week? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She pressed her tongue against the inside of her cheek, a tiny gesture, almost invisible. Something like that. I nodded and focused on the engine. Nothing was wrong with it. Nothing at all. She had to know that. Her hand brushed the edge of the car frame, fingers tapping lightly, like she was thinking too hard about something she couldn't say out loud. I caught the subtle tremor in her pinky. Small, quick, but there. When she realized I'd noticed, she straightened up quickly, unclenching her hand. Sorry. Cold. It wasn't cold. Her voice was too soft when she said it. I checked the belt anyway, giving her the dignity of the excuse. She stood near me the whole time, closer than needed. I could hear the tiny shifts in her breathing, like she kept starting to speak and then stopping. You look tired, I said before thinking. She blinked, surprised, not offended, just caught off guard. Do I? Just your eyes. She looked down at her hands. Yeah, I guess I haven't been myself lately. The admission hung there, fragile and too honest for a place that smelled like oil and cold metal. I closed the hood gently. The belt's fine. She nodded slowly, then lifted her gaze to mine. For a second, barely a breath, her eyes softened with something unguarded, something that wasn't supposed to be there. And then she smiled, small and careful. Thank you for taking your time with it. Her fingers brushed mine when I handed her the keys back. Not enough to call it a touch. More like an accident neither of us apologized for. The rain outside eased, but the air between us didn't. She stepped back toward the doorway, hesitating just once, just long enough for me to feel the pull of something I wasn't supposed to want. See you around, she said. But it sounded less like a goodbye and more like a promise she wasn't ready to admit she was making. It was almost closing time when she came again, later than she'd ever shown up, hair slightly wind-tossed, cheeks flushed as if she'd walked faster than usual. The storm outside was building, a low rumble stretching across the sky like it was warming up its voice. Are you still open? She asked, pushing a damp strand of hair behind her ear. For you? Yeah. Slipped out before I could stop myself. Her eyes flickered upward, quick, unreadable, before she stepped inside. She carried a small paper bag from the cafe down the street. She set it on the counter like she wasn't sure why she was giving it to me. They messed up my order, she said. Gave me 2. I thought, maybe you hadn't eaten. I hadn't. But I wasn't about to admit how much that small consideration hit deeper than it should. We ended up sitting at the back of the shop, on 2 stools near the tool cabinet, while thunder rolled outside. The lights hummed overhead, too bright for how quiet the world felt. She watched the rain for a long time, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. I always forget how loud storms can be, she murmured. I didn't know what to say to that. She didn't seem like someone who forgot things. But tonight she kept fidgeting, tapping the corner of the napkin against her thigh, then stopping, then doing it again. You okay? I finally asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, then exhaled. I had a complicated day. Her phone lit up on the counter before she could say more. A name flashed, Mark. She stiffened. Not dramatically, just enough for me to notice her fingers pause halfway through crumpling the napkin. She silenced the call without looking at me. You can answer it, I offered. No, sharp at first. Then gentler. No, it's fine. We sat in that thin, stretched quiet that comes when someone wants to say something but can't find the language for it. She looked tired again, but this was a different kind. An emotional tired. The sort that sinks into the shoulders and softens every word. I used to come here, she said suddenly. Years ago, before you started working. Her voice had shifted, lighter, but nostalgic in a way that felt dangerous. The old guy who ran the place, he'd always tell me stories about his kids. He said you reminded him of them. I didn't know that. You were younger then. Then, quieter. You're not anymore. The air between us tightened. Not tense, just too aware. She shifted slightly on her stool, accidentally brushing her knee against mine. The contact was small, barely a whisper of touch, but neither of us moved away. A second thunderclap shook the windows. She startled, just a bit, and her hand landed on my wrist before she realized what she was doing. We both froze. Her fingers were warm, trembling. Not enough to be dramatic, just enough for me to feel the truth she was trying to keep hidden. Sorry, she whispered, pulling back. But the apology didn't match her eyes. Before either of us could say anything, her phone buzzed again. Same name, same insistence. She grabbed it too quickly this time, thumb hovering over the screen. She started. But she didn't finish. She just stood there, torn between the storm outside and the one she was carrying with her. And as she turned toward the door, she hesitated, her hand hovering near my arm, like she almost reached for me again. Almost. She didn't come the next day, or the day after, and I tried to pretend it didn't matter, kept my head down, fixed what needed fixing, pretended I didn't catch myself glancing at the door every time I heard footsteps. But silence has a way of getting under your skin when you've gotten used to someone's presence, even in small doses. On the third evening, just as I was locking up, I heard her voice behind me. Wait. I turned. She stood just outside the shop, hair untouched by the breeze, makeup slightly smudged like she'd wiped her eyes at some point and then pretended she hadn't. She looked still. Too still. You weren't here, I said before I could stop myself. She didn't answer at first. She stepped inside slowly, her heels clicking lightly on the floor, each step hesitant, careful. She didn't go further than a few feet. It felt like she didn't trust herself to. I've been avoiding this place, she said finally. Avoiding you? There was an accusation in her tone, more like she was confused by her own confession. Why? I asked softly. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but without any humor. Because something is different. Her eyes met mine, and I don't know what to do with that. The shop was dim except for the yellow ceiling light that always flickered twice before staying on. It made the whole place feel smaller, more intimate than it had any right to feel. I didn't mean to make things complicated, I murmured. But you did, she said, quiet, not unkind. And I let it happen. She moved closer without meaning to, stopping just an arm's length away. She looked at my hands first, like she was remembering how close they had been the night of the storm, then forced her eyes upward. This isn't normal, she said. I know. We barely know each other. I know that too. Then why? She stopped, lips parting as if she'd run out of excuses. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of the things neither of us had the right to admit. She pressed a hand to her forehead, shaking her head slightly. I'm too old to feel this confused. You don't seem old, I said quietly. That's not the point. But the way she said it, the way her voice softened, told me it was the point, just not the one she wanted to defend. She walked a few steps toward the counter, resting her fingers on the edge. Her nails tapped lightly, 1, 2, 3, before going still. Finally, she asked the question she'd been carrying, what are we doing? The words weren't sharp. They were vulnerable, trembling at the edges. I don't know, I said. But I can't pretend I don't notice, whatever this is. Her breath caught, a tiny, barely audible sound. She closed her eyes, bracing herself like the truth was colder than the night air outside. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just looked at me, really looked at me, with an expression that felt like she was searching for something she wasn't sure she wanted to find. And then, in the softest voice I'd ever heard from her, she whispered, I'm afraid of wanting something I'm not supposed to want. She didn't leave after saying it. She just stood there, hand gripping the edge of the counter like she needed something solid to anchor her. For a moment, neither of us moved. The shop felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath with us. I wasn't going to come tonight, she said softly. I drove past this place twice. Told myself I was being ridiculous. What made you stop? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her bag with slow, hesitant fingers and pulled out her phone. She stared at the screen first, thumb frozen above it, then finally tapped. A voicemail played. A man's voice filled the shop. Older, confident, a little too rehearsed. "Look, can we talk? I don't want things to end like this. I miss you. Please." She turned the volume down as if even the muffled sound made her chest tighten. "My ex," she said. "He left that for me a few hours ago." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. She looked ashamed. No, that wasn't it. More like exhausted from carrying something heavy for too long. "I thought I was done feeling anything when it came to him," she continued. "I thought I was past it." She swallowed hard. But hearing his voice again, it felt like my stomach dropped. I stayed silent, letting her keep control of the space. "And then," she said, voice thinning, "I came here." She finally looked up at me. And that was the moment everything shifted, quietly, without drama, but deep enough that I felt it in my ribs. "I don't know why I ended up on this street," she admitted. "I don't know why your face was the first thing I thought of after that message." My breath caught, but I kept my expression soft, steady. She wasn't telling me something romantic. She was confessing something raw. "I didn't think anyone would understand," she whispered, "or listen without trying to fix me." She turned the phone over in her hands, letting the screen go dark. We were together a long time. And when he left, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that stays with you. She wiped her thumb under her eye, pretending it was nothing. I got so used to being the one who held everything together that I forgot what it felt like to be seen. The words landed with a weight neither of us acknowledged. "I didn't mean to make you that person," she said suddenly, almost guilty. "God, that sounds unfair. I'm not. I'm not trying to pull you into my mess." "You're not," I said. She laughed under her breath. Not a happy laugh. One that tried to hide a crack in her voice. "You say that now." Her phone buzzed again. Same name. Same insistence. She didn't even look this time. She just turned it face down. A long silence stretched between us, not tense, just full. Full of things she didn't know how to ask for, and things I didn't know if I should offer. She stepped closer, not touching, not reaching, just closing the distance by a few inches. Enough for her voice to drop to a fragile whisper. "You remind me of someone I used to be able to trust. Someone I lost a long time ago." She swallowed, eyes flicking to mine, uncertain, hopeful, afraid. "I don't want to lose that again." For a long moment after her confession, neither of us moved. The shop was dim, the hum of the ceiling light softening to something almost tender. She stood there breathing carefully, as if any sudden movement might undo whatever fragile honesty she'd just let slip. "I shouldn't have said all that," she murmured, looking down at her hands. "It's too much. You didn't ask for this." "I didn't ask," I said gently, "but I'm here." Her shoulders rose, then lowered, slow, uncertain, like she wasn't used to being met halfway. She brushed a loose hair behind her ear, fingers trembling slightly. The smallest detail, but the one that made my chest tighten more than anything she'd said. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. "Neither do I." She winced, almost apologetic. "I'm not trying to start something. I'm not even sure I'm capable of anything new." "I'm not asking for anything," I said. "I just keep ending up in the same place you are." She let out a breath, shaky, unguarded, the kind of breath someone takes when they've been holding themselves together for too long. Her eyes lifted to mine slowly, as if she was testing whether I'd look away first. I didn't. She stepped closer, not drawn, not impulsive, just tired of resisting whatever pull had been building between us for weeks. I could feel the warmth of her even without touching her. "You make it too easy," she whispered. "Being around you. It doesn't feel easy from my side." A soft, broken laugh escaped her, one she immediately tried to swallow back. "None of this makes sense." "I think it does," I said quietly. "We just don't know the words for it yet." Her breathing slowed, deeper this time. She looked down at the floor, then back at me, like she was deciding something. "Can we just—" She stopped, searching. "Can we just sit?" Without defining anything. I nodded. We moved to the small bench against the wall, the one no customer ever used. She sat first, smoothing her jeans, leaving just enough room for me, but not too much. When I sat beside her, the warmth between us shifted, gentle, real, unforced. She didn't touch me. I didn't reach for her. But our shoulders were close enough that the space between them felt charged. Outside, the wind nudged the door, making it creak softly. Inside, everything was still. I didn't think I'd ever feel safe with someone again, she said, barely above a whisper. Not like this. Not in a way that doesn't demand something from me. You don't owe me anything, I said. She turned her head slightly, studying me with those tired, searching eyes. And that's why I'm scared. I swallowed. I'm scared too. Her hand, resting between us, shifted. Just a little. Just enough that the back of her fingers brushed mine. Not a touch. More like a quiet admission neither of us voiced. I didn't move away. She didn't either. We stayed like that, breathing the same slow rhythm, sharing a silence that felt less like avoidance and more like understanding. A silence that said everything we were too careful to say aloud. Finally, she leaned her head gently, hesitantly, against my shoulder. Light as a sigh, as if she wasn't sure she deserved the comfort, but took it anyway. I closed my eyes. We didn't speak. We didn't move. We just stayed. Two people who had stopped fighting something that had already found its shape. And in that quiet, weightless moment, something settled between us with a finality I could feel in my bones. Not love. Not yet. But the beginning of something we could no longer pretend wasn't real. Looking back now, it's strange how quietly everything changed. There was no grand announcement, no dramatic kiss in the rain, no sweeping music in the background. It was just two people who had already been orbiting each other for months, finally realizing they'd stopped moving separately. I think what surprises me most is how natural it all feels in hindsight. At the time, it felt terrifying, like stepping onto a frozen lake you weren't sure could hold your weight. But now, telling this story from the present, I can see how each moment was leading us here. Every silence that wasn't uncomfortable, every shared glance that lasted a little too long, every time she corrected me gently or laughed in that soft, breathy way that made my chest tighten. None of it was small. I just didn't know how to name it then. And maybe that's the thing I've learned. Not every love announces itself. Some arrive like a change in season, so slow you don't notice the shift until suddenly everything feels warmer. She changed things in me, too. Before her, I confused intensity with love. I thought you had to chase, prove, perform. But with her, I learned that the right connection doesn't demand noise. It invites calm. It steadies you instead of igniting chaos. She showed me that vulnerability isn't something you earn. It's something you offer. Carefully. Honestly. Like holding out both hands and hoping the other person reaches back. And she did reach back. Gently. Like she was afraid she might break something if she moved too fast. I understand why now. She'd lived more life than I had. Carried more heartbreak. Lost more people. Loving again wasn't simple for her. Trusting again wasn't easy. But she didn't run. And that alone felt like a kind of miracle. Sometimes I think about that night. The one where everything finally settled. The night that closed the distance without a single dramatic gesture. We were sitting close, not touching at first. Then her hand brushed mine. Just lightly. Barely there. But neither of us moved it away. It was such a small thing. Yet it felt like the moment the world exhaled. Since then, nothing about us has been rushed. We didn't fall into some whirlwind or rewrite our lives overnight. Instead, we built something, quietly, steadily, piece by piece. And in that slow-building warmth, I learned more about love than I ever had before. Love isn't always a spark. Sometimes it's an understanding, a patience, a place your heart recognizes before your mind does. And maybe that's why this story still matters to me, because it reminds me that the most important shifts in life rarely come with fireworks. They come softly, the way morning light fills a room before you even open your eyes. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?